Hi everyone. Today I want to present you a different perspective on how you should think about your problems, your challenges in your personal life and business life. It is called the reverse thinking or inversion of thinking. There are a lot of different names for this, but at the end of the day is just think the other way around. Rather than think what should I do to achieve something, you start to think what makes me fail if I try to achieve something, and then you try to resolve all the issues that you find that makes you fail. And if you can't resolve all of the things, there's no reason to fail. So in consequence, you should succeed. It seems quite simple and it seems very naive, but it's not. It's quite powerful and used in most enterprise environments when sometimes creativity is needed to achieve a specific goal or a specific challenge. And I can say to you, for instance, if you know about Netflix from the enterprise architecture point of view, technical point of view, they follow somehow this approach, because one of the ways they have to test their systems, it's called chaos engineering. It means they try to fail as most as possible their system, because they think before about all the things that can make their system fail. So they design the system against those failures. So once in a while, they have this kind of a monkeys. It's not real monkeys, of course, they are processes that run on the system and try to break the system and check how the system handles these fails. That's just to show you an example of a big worldwide company that uses this thinking process. So what is the inversion thinking? By definition, inversion is a mental process where you approach a problem by considering the opposite of what you want to achieve. Instead of asking, why do I succeed, you start to ask, how do I fail? And then you focus on avoiding the mistakes that makes you fail, or the negative outcomes that can come, of course, when you try to achieve that decision. And it was popularized by someone called Charlie Munger, which has a popular sentence saying, invert, always invert. So why is inversion important? Its clarity simplifies complex problems by reframing them. Rather than see them and try to find solutions, you look into the files. It's like you are trying to find the boundaries of the success. Meaning when you go, for instance, in a specific path on the street or in the countryside, you try to avoid things. You don't focus on the path per se. You say, okay, I should go on this path because I want to avoid all the things that are around it. If you think for a while, usually we do this intuitively, but sometimes we forget to use this in other important areas of our life. So it's a kind of a proactive risk mitigation because it identifies pitfalls before they occur. Even in project management, there is an area that I really love, which is risk management. And risk management is nothing more than inversion thinking. Rather than thinking about the tasks, you can always define a project by the risks. What is the risk of this to fail? I want to do this, but what are the risks? And imagine that you have a task and you have several risks around it. Usually these risks, you want to address them. And rather than have a task, maybe you have 5 tasks, which are tasks to avoid that for the main task to fail. So you can always ask what is the real metric, if it is the time you take to develop that task, or if it's the time you take to handle all the risks so the task can succeed. It's always a two-sided of a coin that you should consider in every decision. So it gives also a creative boost, encourage unconventional thinking, and it's a complementary approach. It doesn't mean that you should change your current approach with this one, but you can add this one to your toolbox and improve the success of your meeting, brainstorms, or any solution that you are trying to find. And it's universal applicable because it's useful in personal, professional, and technical contexts. There is no specific things. It's just think the opposite. So problems that inversion resolves, blind spots. Usually we think that you know about stuff, but there are a lot of things that we don't know. But when we go the other way around, we start to be creative and try to find things that we never think before. And if you ask for people to say, I need ideas to earn money, and people say, I don't know, it's everything is bad. But if you ask them, what should I do to lose all my money? You have a lot of ideas. So invert all of them. If they say, okay, go and buy things that you don't need, go a lot to the cinema, spend money on streaming that you don't see. And if you see, you can say, okay, this is a great checklist of things that I want to avoid. And if you avoid all these things, suddenly you start to have more money than you expect. And you start to see, I was doing that. Okay. So overconfidence, challenge overly optimistic plans, stagnation, breaks through mental blocks in decision making, people doing the same thing always the same way, it will always get the same results. Now you have another tool, you see the other way, and maybe you can improve and see things that you weren't seeing before. The complexity, it's very simple to unfocus on what to avoid, and it's easy to find. And the failure to anticipate helps foresee potential failures. That it's quite nice. It's a kind of a risk management. So how does it work? So you define the desired outcomes. Let's say build a reliable software system. Everyone wants a reliable software system. So in Vertical, what would make the system unreliable? What should I do to make it break and things like that? List factors that lead to the opposite outcome, poor testing, and clear requirements, and other things that I will explain later in this video. I have a lot of slides about software architectures and these kind of decisions. Then develop strategies to avoid or mitigate those factors, the ones that make fail. Remember that you are collecting failing, not success, and implement and monitor to ensure success. So let's say, for instance, you want some financial independence. It's your goal. And of course, there are more risks, but these three are quite popular. So overspending, that's quite common to understand this. No emergency fund, and speculative investment. Sometimes you just, okay, let's try this investment, but it's very speculative. And we want some financial independence. So the strategy, okay, first let's take this risk overspending. So budgeting and tracking. Get an application. So one of the strategies, I want to create a budget and I want to track where I'm spending my money. It's quite intuitive, but sometimes we don't do it because we never create a real list of things that make us fail or spend more money than we think. No, we don't have a no emergency fund. That's another way for not having a financial independence, because sometimes there are crises in the world, financial crisis, and we want to have an emergency fund. So let's start with something simple like save a 6-month buffer. Take some money every month, for instance. And then some speculative investments. So sometimes I risk here and there about stockings and things like that. Let's invest conservatively. So a possible solution would be to get some apps to do the budgeting. Let's change the financial habits here for the 6 months and create a diversified portfolio. Maybe read about it, but I will create a more detailed plan in a moment to explain this better. This is just a simple example of something that you can do and to help you. And all start about these 3 negative things. Getting ideas to have financial independence, we think about how do I earn more money? But when you start to use the risk, we see the other way around. Where am I spending money and how can I earn money? And it's completely different. So inversion versus traditional thinking. Traditional thinking is achieving success, avoiding failure. It's not getting failures, of course. It's avoiding failure. Question, how do I win? How do I lose? Optimistic, goal-driven, the traditional thinking. It's a risk-aware, proactive. I'm trying to make sure that things that can fail will not fail. In these ones, I'm not doing this. I'm hoping for the best. And this weakness of the traditional thinking misses blind spots because there are things that we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. And so that's why, for instance, brainstorms help in meetings. But inversion thinking make us thinking of the other things that we didn't think before. I'm using too much this word thinking. Can be overly pessimistic. That's one of the risks. If you think all about that, it can go wrong. At some point, you start to be very pessimistic. Oh, maybe it's not a good idea to go forward. But that's not the idea. The idea is just so if you understand all the things that can go wrong, you can avoid them. Okay? Development, inversion in daily life, personal decisions, avoid bad habits to achieve goals. Okay, you say, okay, how do I need to go to the gym. I want to lose some weight. Okay, what makes me gain weight? Maybe my food, maybe the lack of exercise, maybe a sedentary life. It's different. When you see this, you start to check what's wrong and not what you should do one thing to get it right. That's why I really like this approach to brainstorming and thinking. Business strategy, identify what could ruin a project and prevent that. There are a lot of things that can ruin a project, from hiring the wrong people, choosing the wrong architecture, a lot of things. Problem solving, reframe challenge to find innovative solutions. Example, instead of how do I get fit, ask what keeps me unfit, poor diet, no exercise, and so on and so on. Let's see some use cases now. These things work better when we see a lot of use cases and we create this kind of template in our mind So what managing time effectively to boost productivity. There are a lot of books about this. All of them focus most of the time on what is the right process. I'm very skeptical about the right processes, and I think the inversion works better. And time is a universal constraint. Poor management leads to stress and missed opportunities. So let's go kind of a formal approach to use this inversion thing. So the goal is to use time productively when we are working, of course, maybe in our life. So that for the decisions, let's invert. What makes me waste time? Maybe I'm going to too many meetings and things like that. But let's go return to this example. But just to give you an example, procrastination, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it later. Okay, so I'm not being productive. Distractions, social media, I look too much into mobile. I go to the internet trying to find things, learn things. Maybe I have a good intention, but I'm spending time on that. Unclear priorities. I have a lot of things and I don't know where to start. Overcommitting. I say yes too much. Strategy. Use a to-do list to prioritize tasks to avoid procrastination. Start with the prioritizer. There are a lot of books and methods to do this one. Set time blocks for focused work. Students do this. I know a lot of people that work and they also do. To avoid distraction, they will say something. Now I'll be in the zone for 1 hour. And they can use a Pomodoro technique or another one. But for 1 hour, I will not go to any meeting unless there is something urgent. I don't want to be distracted. Okay? Limit social media with app blockers, or even just switch off your mobile or something like that. Put the mobile away from you, even if you are in a specific place in your company. Try to put in a range that your hand doesn't get. You have to get up to get the mobile. That's one way to avoid. Say no to non-essential tasks. No, it's one of the most important things for you to be productive in anything, professional and personal life. Monitor, of course, you have to review daily progress to check if, let's say, another failure that you find that you can avoid appeared, or maybe you are having success with these strategies, or if you should choose these strategies. And of course, the outcome that you want and you expect to achieve is increased productivity and reduced stress. So this is a table that defines what the details, the action that we want to take for those failures, the details and tools and methods that you can use. You define the goal, use time productively, of course, write it. And I think it's common sense nowadays that writing things make things like kind of a, I don't like the word magic, but I know the act of writing make it more real to us, to our brain, how it looks into things, and we want to somehow do it because it's written. When we think about stuff, we just think, but when we write, it's a completely different way to live. Invert the goal, identify time-wasting behavior. So do a brainstorm session. Sometimes you know it. Maybe ask to some people that you trust and ask them, well, where do you think I'm spending time or something like that? Maybe to your manager. I think it's a good thing to ask him. Maybe he can check us. Okay, I repair that you do, or I observe that sometimes you do this and that. Maybe you are taking too much time to do this kind of tasks. They like that. They see in you some interest in improving. It's always a good thing. List failure modes or procrastination, distractions. Just create a mind map and list everything that you remember. So you have now a list of things that you want to resolve. Develop strategies like prioritization, time blocks, limit. You have to-do apps, Pomodoro apps, app blockers, things like that. And of course, monitor. Just create a journal or calendar. I usually have these kind of things with me. I have a tool that I use where I write everything, tasks that I have to do. I put some prioritization. And usually every day I put say this is the task that I want to achieve today. And I try to achieve them. When some of them it's not possible, I move to the other day. Say you can even do something like this. So again, you have our goal, time wastage here, procrastination, distractions, and unclear. These red ones are the issues that we want to avoid, and these are the strategies for each one of them. So now you can create a kind of a plan for each one of them. I think it makes it clear and gives more structure to your decision to have this. To understand that achieving a productive time use is to avoid these three things, and I have a strategy for all of them. And it's easier to find these strategies than to find a strategy to just gain productive time use, because this is the problem and this is something that we are doing. And when we see the other way around, now we have something that we can follow, check, and make sure that we are avoiding that one at a time. I don't believe that everyone will do this in one time. And maybe we start with a few days with just one, then we move to the other, and then we move to the other. We create a checklist with this, something that I will advise you to do. And then you start to put the checks. And I'm not procrastination anymore. I don't know if I'm saying correctly. And then, okay, now I'm removing the distractions. Let's focus on this one. And then when you think, okay, now I'm removing distractions. I did this and this and this. Now I can move forward to the unclear priorities. I will learn about it. Don't try to do all at the same time. Otherwise, you will create other problems. Let's now deep dive in some of examples like personal life, building a solid financial future. So a goal, achieve financial stability and growth, early retirement debt. Why is this important? Of course, everyone knows why it's important to get personal finance freedom. So I don't have to explain, but our inversion helps. So it forces us to confront worst case financial scenarios and build resilience. So let's see what is the steps that you can follow here. First, positive, become financially independent by age 55. I hope that you don't have this age unless you are already independent. Otherwise, you have to move this a few years more. And with sufficient passive income to cover living expense and security. This is your goal. Of course, now invert it. How can I guarantee that will be financial ruin, deeply in debt, and dependent in old age? It seems crazy to write like this, but sometimes we take decisions that after we took them and we are honest to ourselves, you can see, okay, I'm financial ruin because I bought this car, expensive car, just to show to people. I bought this house. I didn't need a house with 3 rooms. 1 room was enough. It was cheaper and it will be better for me. And my monthly payment to the bank will be less. Okay, so sometimes when we think the other way around and we are intellectual honest to ourselves, we see that they are not as ridiculous as we think at first. So we can brainstorm failure modes. So worst financial decision events: spending, excessive lifestyle inflation, and controlled impulse buying. This is quite common nowadays. High interest consumer debt, credit cards and things like that. Income, becoming unemployed with no emergency fund, for instance. Rely on a single income outsource. Always try to have more than one. Not developing marketable skills. Job hopping too frequently or infrequently. Saving, not saving anything. Investing in speculative high-risk schemes. Debt, accumulating high interest debt, credit cards, credit lines. Avoid it. Just as I say, close the water. If you want to take the water out of a hole, just first close the water that is inputting to or filling the hole, right? Planning, no budget, no emergency fund, no retirement plan, ignoring insurance needs, not reviewing financial situation regularly. If you don't review it, you don't know where you're spending your money. And of course, measure an insured health crisis. Sometimes there are crises in the world. Maybe you need some assurance. Maybe there is earthquakes and things like that, and you don't have an insurance for your house for that, and suddenly you lose all your money. So when you write this, it seems very worst scenario approach, but it can save you later in the future. Okay. Analyze and prioritize. Of course, now you take these failure modes and start prioritize them. What are the most common? And you start with those ones: excessive debt, no emergency fund, lack of consistent saving and investing, an insured major event, and things like that. And then you develop the counter-strike strategy. How can you mitigate all of them? Create a budget for the excessive high interest debt, avoid credit card debt, try to buy only what you need. Don't spend if you don't need it. Doing emergency fund, try to just take the money that you can get to another account for 3 or 6 months every year or something. If you don't want to put all the months or every month, just put aside something and make sure that it's that account doesn't exist. And even if you become in debt, try to not touch that money, because it can be a real crisis in the future, and you have some money that you can use. Life consistent saving, automatic saving transfers, define clear financial goals. You should know to where are you going in your financial life, what you want to achieve, how much money do you think you'll have at the end of the year, and things like that. Secure adequate health life, disability. You can get sick, so go to the doctor, go to the gym. If you don't want to go to the gym because you want to spare some money, just run on the street or something, but make sure that you have a good health, sleep well, put investment, educate yourself, try to learn. If you want to earn money, you have to study money. That's the rule, right? If you want to know something, you have to study it. But I see a lot of people that don't study money. If they don't study money, how do they understand? They think money is just money, but there are ways to gain money from money, and people that are rich, believe me, they really study about money. And integrate, and apply, of course, the budgeting tool. Choose one, automatic transfers, to put some money in another account. Insurance review, check which insurance do you have or ones that you can get. Even if they are not expensive, but at least you have something. You can start with simple things, and then later you will see what you can achieve. Having something simple is better than have nothing. Okay, financial literacy, to learn about financial, and of course don't forget to do regular check-ins. Schedule a monthly money date to review the spending. Result, a resilient financial plan. You can see that after I talk and after these videos, you start to think, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe these are points that I can address, and now it's clear. I have a plan, I have a path, I have a checklist that I can follow to avoid the problems or to achieve a specific goal by avoiding the problems. And this is just a representation of what we said. If you want to pause, I will not explain everything, but it's just a visual way for what was explained. So these are the risks in red here: excessive debt, no emergency fund, no saving. And then this is the strategy to mitigate them: the budget for the excessive debt, saving some money to have an emergency fund, auto transfers to make sure that I'm saving money, and ensure the events get that weight insurance, at least start to look for, okay, and start to have some financial literacy. And this is what you want to apply. So use case, let's say now for the software, because my channel is about software. I'm an architect in IT, so I will provide examples, of course, about web. So let's say we want to building a scalable web application. So what do I want? Design a web app that handles high traffic. So what is inversion? What prevents performance? Inversion prevents performance bottlenecks. That's what can happen. Okay, so how Goal app scales to 1 million users? So let's invert. What caused the app to crash under load? That's the thing that we want to check. So I want to handle 1 million users. So what caused the app to crash? So how can I fail it? And single point of failure, inefficient queries, no caching, and I'm sure that you will find others. These are the ones that are the first ones, right? If it fails, it's just one server. Okay, it will fail, point of failure. It can crash, it makes the application not scalable. Inefficient queries, I just write with a lot of joins, things like that. No caching, I don't have caching, and there are a lot of data that can be read. It's read only, they don't change often. So strategies: use load balancers with multiple servers, of course, optimize database queries, implement caching, for instance, Redis. And of course, you should monitor all of these now with stress tests and track performance metrics. I know it's a simple example, but you can see now that one thing is to say how I want to make sure that my web application is scalable and handles a lot of traffic. And I check what caused the app to crash, or maybe just stop working, or with a lot of timeouts. There are a lot of different ways that you can put this question. And maybe you want more than one question here, and probably you will have a bigger list here about how to fail, how to make this fail, or how to make the application crash, how to make the application with bottlenecks, how to make it overloaded with requests, what are the strategies, and how to avoid that. Okay, and that will be the strategies for us to avoid. Again, invert app crashes, issue, single point of failure, inefficient queries, no caching. But I'm sure that you can find others here. Software testing strategy: ensure high quality software with minimal bugs. That's the dream always. Inversion identifies testing gaps. That's the idea of the inversion. So when we invert this, we're trying to find, are we forgetting about something, to make sure that we have high quality? Because high quality is just a word, simple word. But when we invert, we start to discover all the things that can make this fail. So we want to deliver bug-free software. So what causes bugs to reach production? Inadequate test coverage, no edge case testing, manual errors, and I'm sure a lot of them. Strategy: automate tests, cover edge cases, use CI/CD pipeline to make sure that everything is aligned with the strategy that the team or DevOps team defined for the application. And monitor, track bug reports, and test coverage metrics to make sure that we are covering everything. But if something that is wrong that we didn't think before start to appear, we go forward and add it as a kind of a failing, and we create a strategy for that. So again, bug-free software, invert bugs in production, low test coverage, no edge, manual errors, mitigation. Of course, there are more examples here. I just want to pass you the message and the paradigm behind this thinking process. Design a fault-tolerant system, building a system that remains operational during failures. Fault tolerance is critical for user trust and system reliability. That's why we want this system. Well, let's see a step-by-step study. Goal system stays online during failures. Even there are failures, you still the system to continue to work. So what causes system downtime? Well, what can we do to make it fail? Hardware can fail. Network issues can make it fail. Software bugs, overload, others are depends on the architect. Strategies, implement redundancy. You address one. Failover mechanisms to the network systems if you have other database, if they are related to the database. Monitor system health to make sure that we know that is being overload. Apply cause engineering to test resilience of the system. That's the example that I provided before about Netflix. They apply cause engineering to make sure that the system is reliable and is foolproof against all the failures that everyone thought during the meetings. Monitor, track uptime and failure incidents, high available system with minimal downtime. So here you can put on a table if you want to see it differently. So this is the action, define the goal, system stays online, document requirements. Here, that's one way to achieve the system stays online. Invert goal, identify downtime causes, dream brainstorming. These are a table that you can use if you want something more formal. If you want a visual, usually I can do something like this because it's quite easy to understand. Again, system downtime when I invert the fault tolerance, hardware failure, network issues, software bugs, and I have the strategies to mitigate these issues. Now another one, software architect, designer resilient microservices. Microservices is quite popular. Let's check this one. So designer resilient microservice are a critical business function. So why is this important? In a microservice ecosystem, of course, individual service failures, and this is one of the things when you design architecture with microservices, can cascade and bring down the entire system. If you have a lot of dependencies between the microservices and you have a kind of an hub, one that everyone needs, and if that goes down, everything goes in cascade and everything starts to fail. So our inversion helps force architects to think about all the ways a service can fail and design a preventive measures from the start. So define the goal, design a new order processing microservice that is highly resilient, can handle transient failures, and recovers quickly for prolonged outage, ensuring orders always proceed. So let's invert it. How can I design an order processing microservice that guarantees maximum order loss, system crashes, and slow performance? So I start to think, how can I make this fail? Okay, and then we go the other way around. So you have here a list of them. Let's see some of them if you want to consult later. So dependency, it's one of the failure modes. So everyone is dependent on it. So synchronous blocking calls to external systems, not retry logic, no timeouts, no fallback mechanism. So everything is dependent on this one. That's one of the things if you want the system to fail. Another, it's no resource limits. We don't provide throttling or ways to make sure that only the maximum number of requests and messages are reaching this service, because it has limitations because of the CPU and memory that it's there. So that's another, no resource limits. Not transactional integrity, that will corrupt every data, so make us a system fail. Scaling, horizontal scaling impossible due to sticky sessions or shared state, for instance, no load balancing or manual scaling. It's another way. It doesn't mean that our system is bad in all of these things. We just try to find things that can break the system. Most of them probably say, no, our system scales. It's the other things that we didn't address before. Sometimes it's like that. Observability, so we don't understand what's happening inside the system, just crash suddenly as everything stops. Deployment, it's manual. Security, no input sanitization, so it's prone to some attacks. So we analyze these issues and then we prioritize and say, okay, brittle dependencies, it's important one. Resource, lack of observability, no idempotency, which is a great characteristic for microservices, and poor scalability. Okay, now you develop your counter strategies. And in these counter strategies, you say, okay, for each one that we found here, let's get how can we avoid it or improve this. So first, brittle dependencies. Asynchronous communication can be a strategy to resolve that. The other is resource exhaustion. I don't know why I'm blocking on this word. Container resource limits, bulkhead patterns, backpressure handling, vision database schemes, and etc. Lack of observability. Okay, we have to implement OpenTelemetry, and I have a series about OpenTelemetry in my channel if you find, and I talk about Prometheus, Grafana to apply this on your applications. No idempotency, design API that points to be idempotent for retries. It's a great, and I will talk about this in my recipe series. Poor scalability, design for statelessness where possible. So always try to be stateless service every time. Okay, and it will influence the way you implement, for instance, the idempotency and manual unsafe deployment. Implement, of course, CI/CD pipeline, so you can, let's say, make sure that everything works as defined for the system. After we developed our counter strategies, now we can integrate and apply. So at the architecture level, we can incorporate patterns like the circuit breaker, which is quite popular when regarding the reliability and to avoid failures. I will create a video about these patterns in my architecture system design videos, but usually it's a great approach when we want to make sure that you want to avoid, let's say, the failure cascade on the microservices. You have also the pattern about retry. It's intuitive what retry does, and of course an idempotent consumer. Idempotent, it's a great property. Usually it's out of scope of these decision frameworks videos, but idempotent, it's a quite important concept in the sense that it's something that you can call it multiple times, but it doesn't change the state. For instance, if you say that I want to update a customer with, let's say, ID 20, if you update 10 times with the 20, it will always be 20. It's idempotent. The same thing applies for a get. When you get something, a value, it's always idempotent because you get based on a specific ID, and the information that comes, it's always the same. So it gives you trust about the values that exist on the system. So technology choice, select message queues for like Kafka or RabbitMQ. Service mesh, it's quite popular in microservice architecture. Observability stacks like Alk or Prometheus, Grafana. If you remember, we proposed to use OpenTelemetry in our system. Design principles like enforce statelessness. Let's say that statelessness is as good as, let's say, immutable objects in a programming language. It is somehow the same concept, but you can always argue, okay, it's not the same thing. But let's say that if something is stateless, you are more close to achieve idempotency properties. Of course, loss decoupling and equation, which is always great in architectures and on design. Development practice, introduce cause engineering, as I proposed it earlier. If regarding reliability, you want to make sure that your system is prone to errors. Cause engineering, I think cause engineering, it's a quite great example that fits really well with inversion thinking, because the cause engineering makes things happening in a ways that you think. That's why it's called chaos. And in this case, it's like, okay, let's put the system under pressure with a lot of different attacks to see if it fails, and then we resolve these failures, which is nothing more than what we are discussing in this video. And of course, conduct regular load testing and failure injection. Documentation, document failure modes and mitigation strategy as part of the architecture design document, but this is an architecture practice that should be always followed. Result, highly resilient order processing microservices, meaning that by systematically considering how the service could fail, again, and building in preventive measures, that's what we are doing. We are not designing a system to serve our purpose, but we are designing a system that we want to serve our purpose by avoiding any fail that we can imagine that can, let's say, hinder the progress or the goal that we are trying to achieve. So the order processing microservice is designed to be fault tolerant, maintain performance under stress, and recover gracefully from outages, ensuring business continuity. And we know this because each one of the points that are here were addressing as potential failures that we created a strategy and a plan to resolve them. That's why we are sure of this. It's not that I created a system that is scalable because it's in Kubernetes and it scales. Okay, but there are still ways for the system to fail. And what is your mitigation strategy for those fails? One thing is for you to trust the guideline or the purpose of a system. Another thing is you trust because you check all possible fails paths and you try to mitigate all of them. It's a different consistency on your decision, and I think internally I'm sure that you trust more about thinking about all the things that could fail and you avoid them than to think just to, let's say, trust in your intuition or only on your experience or the popular solutions for things. So again, this is one way to see the things that we did previously. So we want to design a resilient order processing microservice. We invert, maximize order loss, crash, and latency. This is the three things that really are bad for microservices. And of course, brittle dependencies. And we change the strategy to use the circuit breaker, which is quite popular to this kind of scenarios. Timeouts, sagas for transactions, asynchronous communication, to avoid for the microservice wait for the other. It will probably wait for a callback if you are using, for instance, Kafka or message queues to send requests and receive requests. Resource exhaustion, like limits, bulkheads, efficient database, and pooling. That's a strategy to resolve this resource exhaustion. There are other strategies for sure. No observability. We want observability, we want logs, metrics tracing, health checks. You can see my series, my video series about OpenTelemetry and observability to learn more about this. But at the end of the day, we want to follow everything that it's happening inside each one of the microservices, and of course on the external also. Now idempotency, like idempotent APIs and message IDs, something to make sure that we are applying the idempotency. Poor scalability. By the way, one of the advantages for having idempotency, I remember that can be useful for you if you are not used to learn about this subject, is, for instance, when you do a REST API call and you get a value, okay, and you trust this value. If you are doing an update, you trust this update. It's stressful because you can update again, you can get, and the value it's still the same. That's one of the properties about idempotency that is useful to achieve, not only for the systems, but for REST APIs and even on code. Poor scalability, stateless design, auto-scaling, load balancing. It's always common strategies to avoid, of course, issues with its scalability. And unsafe deployment, of course, use CI/CDs, blue-greens, rollbacks, canary deployments. There are a lot of strategies that you can use that everyone knows about and understand. You can put the rules there so you are sure that your system is deploying on this places that you want, following the process that you want, with the quality weights that you want. Of course, you want always safe and trustable deployment process. So the benefits of inversion of software, proactive debugging. So you catch issues before they arise. You simplify the design because you avoid unnecessary complexity. You develop thinking about what can fail, and you are avoiding that. You are not putting things for what can happen in the future because we need this feature, or maybe it can scale to something. No, let's put the other way around. What are fails for us in our project, and then we'll address which one of them, and we try to design our system taking that approach. Scalability, plan for growth by anticipating bottlenecks. Team alignment, like clarifies risks for all stakeholders. That's one great thing, because I think it will be more trust even for the management people when you say, okay, we talked about these 15 fails that can happen here on this management area that we are discussing, and we have risk mitigation for all of them. I think this will be better to say, okay, we have a great team and we have a great plan, and I think it will work. If you compare both approaches, you will see that inversion thinking it's better in these cases. And of course, cost savings, reduce rework by addressing issues earlier. Challenge of inversion, of course, there are all challenges. It's not everything is great. We just start to apply. Overthinking risk, sometimes we think too much. Maybe we find 30 files, but we don't address all of them. The risk is really, really low for those to happen. Maybe you should prioritize and say, okay, this one should be there. Maybe you can take a Moscow approach to decide which ones are more important. You can see this. I think it's one of the second decision framework that I talk about. It's a quite nice one to use for this next when you need to make sure that you take the most important ones first, and then the second ones and third ones, and so on. The negative mindset, focusing on failure can feel discouraging. They say there are a lot of things bad that can happen. It will be a lot of work to make sure that they will not happen. But again, as I usually say, you pay the price now or later. You fix it now and you prevent it, or later you have to react to it. So maybe it's not a negative mindset, it's just being preventive. Incomplete inversion, missing key failure modes, of course, and solution balance with positive goal setting and iterative refinement. That's always a good thing. Don't go say, okay, now I will do all the things using the inversion thinking and I don't use the other. No, use both. Use both, and usually when you start with the positive things, you start to check what things can fail using that positive. So you have some trust on your thought. At the same time, you are making sure that you trust more by preventing failures or important fails on your plan. How to practice? Start small in everything. Start always small. Apply to daily decisions, time management, then start to increase, of course. Collaborate with inversion in team brainstorming session. Try to edit in a meeting. You don't have to say, okay, I knew a new technique about inversion thinking. Just start to ask those questions. Sometimes I do that. You are in a meeting and to train on something, just use it there. Say, okay, what risks are we talking about here? We want to build this system, but what can it fail? Sometimes people start to wonder why he's asking this. Okay, it's important for us to have a kind of a risk basis. So we want to be sure that we address everything and nothing is missing. And people say, okay, maybe, let's see what can fail here. The connections, the security, we forget to talk with the test team, we forget the plan. And then you see a lot of issues that can appear. You just address all of them. And now people understand, okay, all these things, are we addressing this? Do we have people? And it will be great for you personally or professional. And at the same time, it will be great for the project because now you have a real checklist to follow to make sure that your system will be okay. Document risks, keep a list of inverted factors for reference. I work in a company that for everything there was a risk, even with a value associated with it, and the owner, a person responsible for it. It was a bank, and there are a lot of them, hundreds and hundreds of risks. Some of them we took into consideration. We had a mitigation. Some of them were implemented, others don't, but we knew beforehand how much it costs if that fail happens. Everything was going to. We had a risk team that his job was just doing inversion thinking on everything. Iterate, refine strategies based on feedback and results. Of course, it's like its usual stuff based on quality, and you should apply in life also, which is you do something, you plan, you act, okay, you do it, and then you review and check, okay, can I increase this? Can I do better on this? Well, what can I do to improve this? And of course, you should do this even for this method. Okay? Tools use mind maps or flowcharts to visualize risks. The ones that I use it here usually are enough, but you can use others where you feel comfortable with. Inversion process documentation method, if you want more formal approach. So we can create an inversion worksheet which helps document and follow the inversion process. So usually, if you remember, all my slides follow somehow this approach. So you establish a goal statement where you write your desired outcome. You invert the goal, state the opposite outcome. Now you list all the factors causing this outcome, the inverted one, and then you have the mitigation strategy. So you define actions to avoid each one of these failing modes, and then you monitor, specify how to track progress and success to make sure that all of these are implemented. So at the end, you are achieving your goal by avoiding all these dangers here. Okay, so you have your goal, the inverted goal, the failure mode strategies, and the monitoring. Applying to the version of this worksheet, so how to use fill out worksheet of any decision or project, used during team meetings to align on risks. You can have a checkbox, you can use Jira, you can use Excel, whatever you want. But it's when you write, it's different, and it's a checklist. It's like there is a great book. I think it's called The Checklist or something, written by a doctor, a surgeon doctor, and it's used, for instance, in the airplanes when the pilot, before it starts, he has a checklist. Is something that he already knows, everything that it's there, but he wants to make sure that goes through all the checklist and talks loudly about this checklist. So he wants to be sure that he's not missing nothing on the plane. And that's one way to do it. And that's one advantage when you have a checklist where things where you write, because we think that we remember things at the time. But I'm sure that after a few days, if you have 15 or 16 items, you will forget some of them. Even if they seem clear now, our brain starts to forget things or just stores them in another place, and sometimes it's difficult for us to remember. So the benefits, this is structured approach to inversion, clear documentation for future reference. It's requirements. Let's say it's inverse requirements, but they are requirements for your application. As I will say, inversed, no requirements for your application if we follow technology point of view. Encourage collaboration and thoroughness, and example used for time management or system design. And you can see the previous slides about it. So in conclusion, embrace inversion, use it as a tool, not the solution for everything, of course. Inversion is a powerful tool to avoid failure and achieve success. Personal growth, business strategy, software design, you can apply in any area. So my next steps, if you want, try inversion on a small problem today. Just think about it on your life and try to use it. Then share the approach with your team. If it's a personal life, probably with your wife or maybe some of your family or someone that lives with you, or maybe just to yourself. Maybe you have a particular thing that you want to do it in secret, and that's okay. And maybe it's even a good practice. But if it's in your company, start with a small project there, something that are being discussed, and create one and bring to a meeting, share it on the screen and say, I identify this. You don't have to write inversion thinking, just show the approach that we talked here. So reflect on outcomes and refine your process. Check what it works, questions that people made to you about it, and things like that, and refine it and do it better the next time. So this is what I wanted to explain to you about inversion thinking. I know that probably off of the slides would be enough, but I like to explain and use different approaches about it. I really like at the end of my video that the idea is really like that movie, The Inception. The idea it's really there, and you understand how to apply it, how to relate with the other approach. I usually, in my videos, I talk about a specific subject, and then I relate with other videos and other approach that I had in the future, other decision frameworks, other subjects, so people can understand at the end of the day, being an architect, and this channel is about being an architect, it's to know a little bit about a lot and know how to orchestrate all of this, like let's say a composer or a maestro that with a symphony, and you are saying, now you play, now everyone plays together, and you have to get the right instrument for the right sounds that you want to hear. So thank you for watching my video. I hope you like this information. I hope it's useful for you. I hope I have improved your life. It improves mine when I write this and create these slides and create this explanation in these videos. So I think it's a win-win. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my next videos. And don't forget to subscribe.